tagliata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro, gol!
Hello and welcome to the Milan Talk podcast. I'm your host Sumeet Paul and I'm delighted to welcome Jason Brown back to the show. JB, it's been a while. How you doing?
It has been a while, mate. Yeah, I'm doing really well. Glad to be back.
Good, man. Happy to have you back on. Right, so with the international break, we thought we'd take the opportunity to use this as like a Q&A podcast to answer some of the questions that you had. We'll also pick out a few of the talking points and transfer rumours over the past week or so. But we're going to start with the questions you've sent in, so thanks very much for getting involved. We really do appreciate it. Jace, first up, we've got Daniel at Dan Rossoneri. How about an overall review of the team, including new players? What has gone right and what has gone wrong? I think the easiest way to do this, I guess, is just to break down the new signings and put them in two categories in terms of who's been good and who's been bad. Starting with a more positive angle. I don't think, based on our comments over the summer, that either of us thought we'd be sitting here in mid-November saying that Fabio Borini might well be one of our better signings of the summer, but that is the way that it's kind of panned out. Have you? I think you've been a supporter of him. You never kind of bought into the criticism that he was getting when he got signed, but pleasantly surprised, or did you expect this kind of Borini doing his best for the team and really kind of being a consistent, solid player for us?
I didn't expect it to go this way, to be honest, but I did at the time. I thought it was a good signing simply because it was so he was so cheap, and we know that he does have some sort of quality. And the fact that both of us thought he was just a backup, I thought you get a backup of Borini's. We did agree that we know he's got that work ethic. So you get a backup with that kind of that energy, and he does, like I say, he's scored some screamers in his time in the Premier League. I'm like, if you could do that a couple of times for $5 million, you can't go wrong, can you? Yeah. But he's definitely gone above and beyond that. So if you're looking at comparing costs to output, he's got to be the best signing of the summer.
Really has. I think I've been pleasantly surprised. I think the point that you make there is that the only thing missing is that quality in the final third. If he can, even if it's just on a rare occasion, produce that bit of magic to either produce an assist or a goal, we'd be raving about Borini being an absolute steal. What a signing. He's, like I said, you can't question his work ethic. He works hard, his versatility, playing in various roles this season. It's been absolutely brilliant. So full credit to him, silencing the doubters. In terms of that good sort of category, I probably stick Ricardo Rodriguez, Andre Silva and Matteo Musacchio in there as well. Would you debate any of those three? Or I know you've been a big fan of Rodriguez so far this season in particular, but would those three be in the good books for you?
Yeah, they would. Like you say, Rodriguez, I think he's up there as well. I was really excited when we signed him. Silva has done well for me. I think oddly enough, I don't think he's had enough opportunities, but when he's been given them, he has. He hasn't disappointed. I still feel there's more to come from him, but I would still put him in that good category. Yeah, and I do agree with Musacchio as well. I think he's been fairly solid.
Yep, I'd have to agree. I take your point as well on Silva. I think, especially in Serie A, he's not been used enough, and that's a big criticism of Montella so far this season. So we've seen what he can do in the Europa League, and I think he'll only benefit from having a consistent run in the team. So the more we see of him, the better, in my opinion, hopefully, moving forward after the international break. In terms of the sort of disappointing and bad group, if you like, I've put Bonucci in there to start with, but in his defence, I do believe he has been better more recently. He had that suspension, he came back 2 games in a row, 2 clean sheets, and he has looked more settled, more commanding. He's cut the mistakes out, and I think we're starting to see the Bonucci that we thought would be signing. So I still stick him in there for the being kind of disappointing for the start of the season, but he's definitely starting to turn it around in most people's opinion. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think we both were on here talking about how disappointed we were in Bonucci. But like you say, you pulled up his stats there. He definitely came back after that suspension, and is it as if the rest was good for him? I think he's had time to contemplate, and he's come back with a new mindset, and he's definitely improved. And let's hope it just continues.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to upset you with my next pick. And
I know.
I have put Frank the Tank Kessie in this group as well. All sides so well. We were raving about him being, that real commanding, sort of powerful driving force in midfield. Ultimately, I think he got overplayed too soon and he kind of burned out immediately. And given that we haven't got an alternative in the squad to kind of rest him, and Montella's mismanagement of him playing him when he probably should have rested him, I think we've seen Kessie really struggle. Again, similarly to Bonucci, I still feel there are more positive signs recently, just before the break, but I'm guessing you are disappointed with Kessie, especially with all the high expectations that we had in the pre-season.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed. Like you say, I do agree with you. It is down to, I think he's exhausted. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully he gets back to where he was at the start of the season. But like you say, it does all depend on how Montella manages him and his output. But I'm not going to say in his defence, but to level it against him, we're not even like halfway into the season. If you don't have the stamina to last half a season, then maybe you shouldn't be playing professional football. But I do agree, he does do a lot for the team, and the fact that, like you say, there is no alternative, he does get used all the time, so it is a lot on him to bear. So hopefully in January that's addressed and we get someone who can fill that role, so that we can give my man Frank a bit of a rest now and again. But yeah, unfortunately, I'd have to agree he goes in the bad category for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Additionally, in this group, I've got Biglia, Çalhanoğlu and Kalinic. Again, I'm disappointed in all three, really, especially Biglia. We thought he'd be a key signing in midfield, stringing everything together. I don't feel like we've seen enough character, enough personality in his performances to be a sort of real positive impact, influence on us. Hakan has had his problems. He's just too inconsistent, goes missing too often. And our good friend at VA Jack Sparrow has been very keen to point out on a number of occasions how badly wrong we've got it on Kalinic so far. It is really disappointing, Jason. Okay, so maybe we probably thought he might have struggles with goal scoring. We did say a respectable tally this season. We didn't expect him to be a prolific scorer as such, but it's the little things that he's not doing that we thought he would in terms of building up play, helping to link up things and running the channels, being clever. We've just not seen enough of him. So combine those with Biglia, Hakan. Do you agree with those are all in the disappointing category so far?
Yeah, mate, I can't fault you there. I'd just like to add, I am disappointed in Kalinic, like you say. The things that we thought he was there to do, he's not doing. I don't know, again, if that's down to playing styles being different to where he was at last in Fiorentina, but I was really expecting more. I thought he was like the perfect addition that we needed just to cap the team off nicely, but it hasn't gone to plan, has it?
Not at all, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I guess you could apply the same and say maybe not enough of the season has gone. He's still got plenty of time to kind of turn the opinion and turn things around for himself. But
yeah.
I think with the competition up top, where he's not got many more opportunities to continue to disappoint. So we'll have to wait and see. Andrea Conte's been injured. It'd be quite unfair to stick him in the bad category, I guess. But fingers crossed he can come back before the season ends. Anything else, Jason, in terms of what you've seen from players, the team? Obviously, the back three has been a massive talking point. We've stuck with it, even though there was a case when Bonucci was suspended to maybe go to a back four and kind of test that out moving forward. In terms of standout players, I'd probably stick Suso in there as being our best player, obviously creating and scoring goals. He's been our most consistent performer. But any thoughts on the back three, whether that still is the way forward and Suso's early form? I
think, I'd agree. The back three was an interesting one, keeping it when Bonucci was out. But I agree if Montella decided to make this move to suit Bonucci and Bonucci's his man, I think we have to stick with it. We see the trend across Europe as well. A lot of teams are switching to the back three. So I think it's kind of the only thing I can compare it to is back when it used to be 4-4-2. You'd never think back then that you wouldn't play without two strikers.
Yeah.
And now I can't name a team that plays with two strikers. And I think we're moving towards that in terms of, the back three. I think the traditional, two centre backs is gone. And I think a lot of more teams will be switching to the back three model. And I think it's good that we've got the players to do that. And we just need to continue that moving forward. to your point about Suso, I would agree. I think he's popped up with a bit of magic. He has been one of the most consistent players as well, which is good because he's with all the 11 new signings. I think we needed him to kind of step up and although he's not he's not team captain, but he needs to show that sort of leadership.
Yeah.
Being one of the more senior players. So yeah, I'm very impressed with Suso and I hope it continues.
Is there a negative to that though as well, in the sense that we look almost lost when he's not being influential? We have to keep going to him to make something happen, whether it's delivering a dangerous ball into the box, whether it's cutting in on the left. I know people are starting to draw comparisons to Arjen Robben now because you know what he's going to do, and yet he still manages to curl a shot into the back of the net, or he always finds a way to do something. Is that a concern for you though as well, at the same time, that we do have to rely so heavily on Suso when Hakan, Silva, Kalinic, other people aren't stepping up and delivering as well?
It is a little bit, but I mean, to reference what we talked about earlier, the fact that Silva isn't being used in Serie A, I think he might be the guy. Do you know what I mean? So I think once Montella puts a bit more faith in Silva, we might find, and to mention Cutrone as well. I think if the two of them get more of a chance, I think the reason why Suso is so relied upon is because he's really one of the few players that Montella trusts in that role. So I think it's probably down to Montella. If he gives Cutrone, especially, I think if he's given the responsibility, I don't see him shying away from that. And same with Silva. So hopefully we start to see them used more, and we'll get to see what they're made of. And I don't doubt that they'll be two players that we can depend on to pop up with a bit of magic and score some important goals.
100%. Can't disagree with that. Next question's from Samir Mohammed at Samir Mohammed 72. Do you guys think that we can still reach the top four, or have we got to work with the Europa League? Can we win that, because Atletico Madrid and Dortmund have joined as well? In terms of top four, Jace, I am starting to think we can't. There's a 9-point gap between us and fourth place at the moment. You've got Lazio and Roma with both of the game in hand. And crunching the numbers, I think the top five have played a combined 58 games and they've won 47 of those. So that kind of outlines the task that's ahead. And for me, especially with that indifferent form, we've got Napoli next after the international break. The gap could be even bigger. Do we really have the confidence that we can close that gap and be consistently great between now and the end of the season and hope that those guys slip up? I can't see it. I think we've given ourselves too much to do. Do you agree with that? Or do you still have faint hope that we can still manage it?
I still have faint hope. I take your point. It does look like a bit of a lost cause, but for me in football, Christmas around that time is always quite vital. I think, especially now you got the mid-season window. So I think I'm not wishing injury on anyone, but that top five, the minute anything can happen to some of their star players. I'm not saying I want it to, but the same point, anything can happen to our star players. I take that point as well, but I just think it's a bit too early to write us off. And teams go through periods of bad form, and we potentially could go through a period of good form. I think if some of our issues are addressed in the January window, we might be able to mount a bit of a last-minute surge and jump up 3 spots, sorry. But I do take your point. Looking at that current top four is going to be very difficult to dislodge any of those. But part of me thinks we might just miss out, and potentially, if we can put together a good run of form, we could potentially pick Roma, or more likely just leapfrog Sampdoria. But yeah, I still remain hopeful, although it's more with my heart rather than my head.
I'm glad you're back, because I've needed your positivity. Because you're not going to like my next answer either, I don't think. But I mean, I don't want to sound like a miserable sod, but in terms of Samir's question about the Europa League, you've got to question whether we can do anything in that either, because I feel like it's our better shot in terms of getting back to the Champions League. And I'm not suggesting that's going to be, it's a walk in the park, it's the Europa League, we've got enough quality, better quality than other teams, we should walk it. I just think that with those teams coming down as well, with Arsenal, of course, I think our form so far this season, you can't confidently say that we've got what it takes to be a team that can go all the way through the knockout stages, go all the way and win it. So I think, I'm not saying we should prioritise it just yet. I'm not saying like just to put all our eggs in one basket and go for it, but I feel as though that is potentially now rapidly becoming our best opportunity to get back to the Champions League.
Yeah, I agree. It, like you say, it will be difficult, mainly because of Arsenal. Yeah, Atletico Madrid and Dortmund as well. Yeah, they will be difficult opponents if we are drawn against them. But yeah, it's a hard one. I think cup competitions, it's probably easier to hype yourself up for those big games, especially when you're looking at the two-legged affairs. I think you have got more of a chance, and you can probably kind of get your way through those ties tactically. Whereas a league game, some teams are just happy to take a draw. In the cup competition, draws are not good. So it kind of you kind of open up a bit more, and that's when you're liable to make a mistake, lose a goal here, or the other way could be said as well. But it's going to be very difficult to win the Europa League, I think. But like you say, the way the league's looking, it is looking like our only hope.
Yep, certainly is. Still holding hope, Jace, of Arsenal Milan final, but we'll have to wait and see if we're making that trip next year. But we'll fingers crossed. Second part of Samir's question was, this January, should we get a world-class player, a few young potential players, or an old head capable like Zlatan Ibrahimovic? I think I personally would only like one, maximum two players to come in and fill key positions that have been problems. I'm specifically looking at a winger and a midfield alternative to Kessie, as we mentioned. I don't think we're going to splash out, and we're certainly not going to splash out as much as we saw in the summer. So for me, I think it's a case of stopgap solutions and maybe even looking at potential loan deals, just so we've got something for 6 months and then reassess at the end of the season and then go again in the summer and kind of get our plans in order moving forward. Do you see us differing from that? Do you still hold hope that maybe there will be one big name in January, or is that kind of same kind of theme that you're thinking of?
Yeah, same sort of theme. I don't think we'll spend big, especially with the way things are with Montella. I don't know if they're gonna give him, another kind of blank check, as it were, to spend big if potentially he may not be here next season. I think they'll probably wait and see what happens there. But I agree. I think some key positions, like you mentioned, the Kessie alternative, I think will be key, and a winger, like you say. But although Barini seems to be able to play anywhere, we could stick him on the wing for a bit. But I reckon we might get a centre mid. But yeah, I don't see us spending big in January.
No, certainly not. But you never know; they might have a surprise in store. So we'll have to wait and see. Bori Olodemi at Bori Keynes begins with a point. I think Montella should get fired if he plays Kalinic against Napoli. He's not showed any spark the last few games. Doesn't make sense to play him if you have someone like Andre Silva on the bench. I think we both agree with that, but we'll come to that in a second. So I guess my question is, should Montella get fired if he loses against Napoli and plays Kalinic over Silva? I don't think the Kalinic thing is going to warrant Montella getting fired, even though it's a very, very frustrating sort of situation where Silva has to be our first choice. And even someone you've mentioned earlier, Cotrone, I would even put above Kalinic in the pecking order. So yeah, it's very frustrating, it's annoying, but I don't think that's sort of grounds to kind of say, yep, if he does that, then he's going to go. But in terms of a loss against Napoli, Jace, I, again, don't think that's going to make a difference. I think if Fasone and the hierarchy wanted to make a change, they would have probably done it over the international break. It would have made most sense to do it then, give the new manager a couple of weeks to bed in, get to know the players, start again. If you lose to Napoli, leading the way, top team in Italy, some people's favourites for the title, I don't think that's going to be enough to say, yeah, do you know what, we've had enough, that's Montella gone.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be harsh. I do think, like you say, they would have made the change now, but I reckon the higher-ups know whether or not, Montella is their man for next season, and whether or not it's worth letting him go now, or, as it were, kind of writing the season off and just preparing for next season. So I don't think we'll see him go mid-season, because I know I've talked before about potential managers who are available now, I think if we were going to sack Montella, we would have done it and had him replaced. But I think they're probably waiting to see who becomes available in the summer, so, or who they can tempt away from a club. So
Yeah.
I think, regardless of the result, I don't think Montella will go.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I think let's go to the next question, because I think I've got a point in terms of what you mentioned there about alternatives to Montella. So Moz at Mr. GL, do you give Forza Mirabelli credit for being patient with Montella, or do you think they should have sacked him already? Again, I think it can go either way, couldn't it? If it works out between now and the end of the season, they're geniuses because they stuck by Montella, they showed faith in him, and everything worked out in the end. But if things don't improve, then they're going to receive blame as well for not acting quicker. And personally, I think it's right that they've probably stuck with him for now, because I just don't see the viable alternative. Like you said, Jace, I mean, you can talk about Ancelotti as much as you want, but does he really want to come back to this kind of situation at this stage of his career? I don't think so. I think he's going to look for a top job, see out his career with a few more trophies and ride off into the sunset. Paolo Sousa was linked with the job. He's now gone to China. Walter Mazzarri, former Napoli Inter boss, don't see what he would offer differently to Montella. I think we'd probably be taking a backward step, if anything, with him. And then I'm presuming you may have been hinting at Antonio Conte in the summer, whether he leaves Chelsea or not. But for right now, I just don't see where the alternative comes from. So I probably would give Forza Mirabelli a bit of credit for being patient, but it's also been forced on them to an extent, I believe personally. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think you're spot on with the Conte point. I think I'll be very surprised if they haven't already reached out to Conte's people and are potentially, like you say, just holding out for him in the summer. But yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I think, the alternatives, like you say, they've probably had a look and they're just not there at the minute. So why let go of someone who has built this team, essentially, to bring someone else in who's going to want to try and bring their own players in January, and then you're looking at spending a massive amount in one season. And like we talked about before, in some of our previous pods, that might mess up the financial fair play.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to, like you say, give the higher ups a bit of credit.
Yep, I'd have to agree. Just on Conte though, do you see that as a genuine option at the end of the season? I know he's had his troubles with, well, we're led to believe that he's had troubles with Chelsea dating back to the summer, whether that was with the Diego Costa situation, whether that was with lack of depth being added to the squad, some reports of him being homesick, wanting to go back to Italy. Do you see the way things that are playing out at Chelsea? I know they beat United before the international break. Do you see a split coming between Conte and Chelsea, or do you think that ultimately, if results arrive between now and the end of the season, then that will just determine it and he'll stay for longer if that's the case?
Well, I definitely see a split coming. I believe, like you say, there was a lot of talk over the summer, even before a ball had been kicked, about there being, a bit of tension between Conte and the Chelsea board, like you say, with the lack of investment on players, which is always a bad sign, I think. We saw kind of a similar pattern to when Mourinho had just won the league, and then the next season he was gone just after Christmas. Yeah. So it seems as if there was always a bit of tension there, and the way that Chelsea have been playing, like you say, I know they beat Man United just before the international break, but I doubt very much that they're gonna get top four. They might just nick it, but I think anything less than top four will definitely see him go.
No, I have to agree with that. That certainly seems to be the case.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Moving on to the final question, was from Dallin Totiantum from at MDCoop3. Greetings, Sumeet. Any chance to sign Aubameyang in winter or summer, or is it a lost cause? This team is in desperate need of pace. He's been on record wanting to play for Milan. Give me pace or give me death. It's quite dramatic, Miles. Hopefully for the former. Can't agree with Miles more on this point about pace. I've said it before in previous podcasts. We're absolutely desperate for some. I think it's all well and good having the likes of Hakan, Suso, Bonaventura, all these technically gifted players being good on the ball, but if you've got no pace, got no movement, especially on that left wing, we just can't get in behind teams. We can't have that one-on-one situation where we're causing a different problem. So for me, pace is absolutely necessary moving forward. I don't think we've got any chance of Aubameyang in January. Can't see that being a mid-season move. And to be quite honest, I think if we flop this season, I think it makes it difficult for us for next summer. I do take into account that he did make it fairly clear that he wanted to come back and he was essentially waiting for Milan to do something. But, if we're talking about splashing out, I don't know how much you rate him at, Jace, but we're looking at close to 80 odd million euros, I guess, to prize him away from Dortmund. If we're going to splash out that much, that must mean that we're going to have to sell to get him as well. So I think it's very difficult moving forward. Definitely not in January, and I have my doubts next summer. So again, I'm being a miserable one. Can you shed any positivity on this Aubameyang potential signing?
I think I agree. Definitely not in January, but potentially again. For me, it all comes back to who will be managing us next season. I think depending on who comes in or if Montella stays, a deal potentially could be done. Because I see some current players going, like you say, we would have to sell, and definitely if a new manager comes in with new ideas, they'd want to bring in their own people, probably get rid of some of the current players. And if Aubameyang is like you say, he has mentioned that he does want to come back. If he is out there again available, I could see as someone like Conte potentially going for him. I think I'm not wrong in saying that Aubameyang was linked with Chelsea this season as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think Conte is keen on him. And I know this is all just speculation. We don't know if Conte is going to be the new Milan manager, but if he does take over the reins, I wouldn't be surprised if a deal does get done.
Give me a Conte Aubameyang double next summer, and I'm a happy man. I'm all over that. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't know, Jace. Hopefully, you've just given us an exclusive there. We might have a new manager and a top striker next summer. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Good stuff. So again, thanks for all the questions. Really do appreciate it for getting involved. Just a couple of other talking points that have arisen over the last couple of days, week or so since the last game. We've had the sad news, Jace, of Andrea Pirlo announcing his retirement from football. Really sad. I think it definitely shows me my age, because it's almost like one of those ones you grew up watching, one of your kind of heroes, seeing him hang up his boots. It hit me quite hard, to be quite honest, and I was quite surprised how upset I was over it. But one of the game's greats, in terms of being one of the best midfielders to ever grace the game, in my opinion, whether that was with his vision, passing, way he moved on the pitch, and just his all-round game. I think he was just one of those silky, classy players that was loved by not only for the clubs that he played for, but I think generally around the world. He was just one of those figures that many loved. So sad to see him call it a day.
Yeah, definitely is. Like you say, he's definitely one of the best midfielders ever to grace the game, and I think you can tell and how big an impact a player has had when as a kid you see the kids playing and they're naming passes after him. You talk about that Pirlo pass. Do you know what I mean? It's just synonymous with a great long field ball. You think, yeah, he's pinged it like Pirlo, hasn't he? So I think it is a shame. It, like you say, it shows our age. The fact that we've kind of grown up with him, and it will be disappointing to see him go. He's done so much for not just Italian football, for football in general, and it's a shame. And hopefully, he has a good send off.
Absolutely. Do you think we'll see another one like him? I know it's difficult to say we'll ever have like a similar player, but because my kind of thing is that we've spoken about it previously on our pod as well, just in terms of how the World Cups don't feel as special as they used to, whether that was because of the star power, the individual quality. You enjoy seeing, you mentioned Closer the last time we spoke about this, I remember. The Brazilian Ronaldo, the original, the better one, in my opinion. Pirlo's, all these players. Do you think we'll be able to kind of breed it, like bring in a new generation and kind of move on from him? Or do you think we'll always look back and pine for, like you said, no one can play a pass like Pirlo kind of thing? Do you see that happening? Or are you positive about the future and other players stepping up?
I think from our perspective, I think it's always difficult, the nostalgia aspect of how old we were when we saw these players at World Cups. I think for the younger generation, they probably already feel that way about some of the younger players. But I think for us, it'd be very difficult for me to view another player in the way I viewed Pirlo, or the way I viewed Ronaldo, like you said, or Closer. So it's going to be very difficult. But I think we will see some some pretty special midfielders. When he do what Pirlo did, I doubt that very much.
Absolutely. Just to bring up your point, my nephew thinks Gabriel Jesus is like the best thing ever. So completely agree with your point there. Good stuff. Right. So just some comments from Gattuso, which I picked out. I thought were hilarious. In terms of on whether he helped improve Pirlo as a player, he said, "Don't talk nonsense. Let's not confuse Nutella with something that I can't repeat. I played with him for about 20 years when you consider the national youth teams. In difficult moments, I just gave it to him. I always felt assured when I was next to him. I understood what I had to do, and he was taking care of the rest. He helped me much more in my career than I did him." So that kind of just tells you everything you really need to know when his teammates talk of him so highly. So, definitely sad to see Pirlo go, but fingers crossed, like I said, good send-off, and we see other talents step up. In terms of other news, Jace, there was a 3-hour meeting with UEFA to present the financial fair play proposal. Comments coming out of that meeting were that Milan were optimistic about the outcome. They've also enlisted BGB Western to refinance debt and find new investors to buy out the hedge fund from Elliott Management. Again, it's difficult to kind of make too many comments when we don't really know the full picture, but what do you take away from that? Are you positive that we're taking steps to kind of get the financial situation in order, or do you still look at it coupled with kind of failures on the pitch so far this season and think there's a lot of question marks unanswered yet? We really do need to kind of start getting the house in order. Is it still an area of concern for you, or do you think we've got it all in control for now?
I think, like you say, it's hard to tell, but it seems as if we're being proactive about it, which is always a good sign. So hopefully, I think they're being quite honest when they say they feel optimistic, but with finances, especially massive debt that we have and the amount of spending that we did, it's going to take time. So I think, a club with our heritage and our history, I think, no one will let us go under. I think there will always be someone who wants to invest in a club with the kind of prestige that Milan has. So hopefully there's nothing to worry about. But I'd really, like you say, with football finances, the numbers are just so astronomical. It's you can never tell, can you?
No, it's true. Yeah, certainly is. That seems that way. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see in the coming days and weeks whether we get more information, and hopefully it's a brighter picture. And unfortunately, Jace, we're going to have to end on a potentially negative note. We've got Italy struggling badly to qualify for the World Cup. 1-0 down against Sweden ahead of the second leg in their World Cup playoff in Milan on Monday night. It's going to be really strange if Italy don't get there. I'm still quietly confident that they can do it, based on qualification so far, and Ventura's received a lot of criticism, and rightly so, in the last week or so, especially after that Sweden game, but throughout the qualification process as well. Italy haven't failed to qualify for a World Cup since 1958. I still remember the good old days, me and you, as young 18-year-olds coming out of sixth form, celebrating Italy winning the World Cup in 2006.
Yeah.
It's going to be damaging, I feel, for the World Cup. I know they don't play the greatest football on earth, and there are still people that, detractors out there, but it's not going to be the same for me, the feeling-wise, in terms of having a World Cup without Italy. Would you agree, or would you see if they don't qualify, it just simply means they've not been good enough?
It would be a shame not to see Italy, especially after the World Cup. The last World Cup, we didn't hold much. I personally didn't hold much hopes for the team going into it, and they really surprised me the way they played. So it would be a shame. Oh, I'm thinking about the Euro. Sorry, I think the Euros really impressed me. So it would be a shame not to see the team there. Like you talked about, the nostalgia attached with World Cups and Italian national team. So not to have them there would be really disappointing. And to mention the fact that they're going to be replaced by Sweden, I think who would rather want Sweden? I can't name 3 Swedish players. I can name Zlatan. That is it.
He's retired.
He doesn't even play. So, for me, yes, you got to get Italy in there. I think, no disrespect to anyone Swedish who's listening, but definitely would prefer Italy over Sweden.
Absolutely. Well, I think time is going to be up for Ventura if they don't make it. It has to be. I don't know if you saw that viral clip of Insigne coming on against Sweden and kind of sort of explaining to the players on the pitch that he was meant to be playing in the midfield when he's a winger for Napoli, and they're all just like, really? Are you really playing as a midfield? So I think Ventura not only has kind of frustrated and angered a lot of supporters, but he's also got the players all mixed up. So failure to qualify, Ventura out, and to be quite honest, if Italy do qualify, I don't see them having much hope with Ventura still in the hot seat. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But yeah, big game tomorrow night. Jace, I think that's a wrap for this podcast, unless you had anything else you'd like to add.
No, I think we covered it all. It was definitely good to be back and talking about some good football again.
Absolutely, mate. Hopefully we'll get you back again for another Q&A in the next few weeks or months, but definitely happy to have you back. Thanks for coming back on. In terms of keeping up to date with everything, we've had a small change. You can find us at Milan Talk 1 on Twitter and Milan Talk 1 on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube at the same place. But until next time, Jace, nothing left but to say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye to the people.